Welcome back to another episode of Simply Medicare. I'm your host, Debbie Straub, and I am so excited to bring to you Cathy Tishhouse and Joe Sheeran. And I have known both of them for years, and they're in the real estate market. Cathy is in the real estate market, and Joe is in the mortgage industry. And we're going to talk to them today about what they see, trends in the market, how they work with senior citizens, and how it can be a positive experience, because we've all had those experiences or heard of those experiences where it hasn't been so positive. But we want to try and keep it upbeat, light today and shine a really positive light on that experience. So I want to introduce to you two of my friends. And Cathy, why don't you go first and introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Cathy Tishhouse with ReMax Showcase Homes. And I graduated undergraduate and secondary education at Western Michigan University on the west side of the state. And I moved here many years ago, and I got a job as a waitress in the revolving restaurant at the Summit. And I did that for many years until they needed somebody in human resources. So I moved down there to be recruiting manager and training manager. And then I went on to get my master's in adult education. And then 2001 happened, and the hospitality industry and everything kind of stalled. And I was looking for a next profession. And my sister was a realtor on the west side. And my best friend was a realtor in the company I'm with now, because her sister owns it. So I decided to do real estate, and that was 19 years ago. And so it's been my longest job, and I love it because I love working for myself. I love showing homes, and I have the hospitality background. So that's a quick synopsis.
Yeah, it makes you very unique. And I'm sure that helps you to get an understanding of folks a little better. So Joe, let's hear from you.
Good morning, Debbie. Thanks for having me on. My name's Joe Sheeran. I'm a mortgage broker out of Novi, Michigan. I've been in financial services since 1986, right out of college, Michigan State University. And I got into mortgages back when the mortgage industry collapsed in 2008 and 2009. I switched from financial advisor to mortgages because I felt it would be a great time to get in the industry and use my skill sets as a person that understands finance and help people buy a house, refinance their house. And it's been a great 12-year run, basically 13-year run. As far as my background, that's pretty much, I love people. I love helping people. It's really gratifying. And compared to the financial services industry, I love the fact that it's a tangible, and I'm helping people buy a house. They got a key, they walk in, the house is going to be there. And in the securities industry, is try as hard as you could to, provide good investments, and then, things completely out of your control can happen and hurt people. And I just found this industry to be, very gratifying. And I love people. I get to talk to all different types of people from all around the country. And I look at them as friends, develop relationships, and it's been very, very enjoyable.
And all three of us know each other from a nonprofit organization that we are in called SACRN. We call it by the acronym Senior and Caregiver Resource Network. And it's a whole group of professionals that are dedicated to helping seniors live their very best life. And both of you are in that. I'm in that group as well. And so we all have a really unique perspective when we're working with seniors. So Cathy, tell us a little bit about what is it like when you first meet a senior and they are faced with having to sell their house. Maybe they want to sell their house, maybe they don't want to sell their house. They've lived in that house for 60 years. Maybe they need to downsize, go into senior living. What is it like to begin to work with a senior like that?
Well, one of my more memorable scenarios was we met someone who was, I think, in her 80s when we met her. And it took us 2 years to get the house ready and to guide her. We were meeting with her a lot. She felt like she was my mom after a while. And so you can imagine, it was a 4,000 square foot house where she raised her kids. Her husband had passed away like 20, 30 years ago. And so she had a home full of things. So we were trying to find estate sale people, to help her throughout the process. And just wonderful, but it was hard because it was a beautiful home on a very 9 acres in Bloomfield Township. And so as it got closer, her family, she was moving in with her daughter in another state. And they kept trying to load up everything and take it away. And we're trying to get it sold. And it was a hard process for her. And but we just fell in love with her. So she trusted us, and it turned out well. The one thing I would like to say that kind of goes into what Joe does is that we didn't know until about 2 years that she had an interest-only loan that somehow she gotten into. And luckily she trusted us from our relationship and told us. So we were able to help manage the whole process a little bit better. And I don't know who advised her to get into that kind of loan, but it's really important to get guidance and when it comes to a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So Joe, tell us a little bit about what is it like when you're dealing with a senior? And I know that we'll probably eventually talk a little bit about reverse mortgages, but what's it like when you meet that senior and they need to sell and buy something else, and they may not have done this for 60 years? What's it like?
They're relying on trust, because it's some have the wisdom and knowledge, I guess they haven't lost, the savvy, or the understanding. But in most cases, it's, they want that rapport and that trust because they're relying on, the younger person that's deeply engaged in what's going on in the modern world, all the differences and the nuance and differences. So that's crucial, and it's an emotional ride. It's an emotional ride for anybody. I don't care, young or old. But I think it's a bigger deal because they're older. They're on a fixed income or limited income. It's it's risk adverse type mentality, and so when it happens and it happens smoothly, they're extremely grateful. Because it is frightening.
Yeah, and this is the generation, the greatest generation that, or right after that left their front doors open. They trusted everybody, and they're scared. They're scared. I mean, I know when I deal with them in Medicare world, they're telling me a lot of really personal stuff, as I'm sure you guys get that too. And trusting and building that trust relationship is something extremely important, and they want to be able to trust. And so being able to gain their trust, I think, is really important.
Yes.
And one of the things I would interject is that people, I feel, any buyer or seller, they don't do that very much in their life unless they're a high investor stuff. So it's rare that you really go through that process. So you need somebody that you can, ask a lot of questions of and really, like Joe said, trust.
So Cathy, a lot of times we'll drive through our neighborhood and we'll see for sale signs. Every once in a while, we'll see a for sale by owner. Why would you encourage folks to not do for sale by owner and to trust someone such as yourself in the professional realm to try and do that work for them? And I'm sure that somehow will tie into why you work with Joe and how you trust Joe versus if I was trying to sell it on my own, I may not ever find a Joe. So explain to us and help us to understand how that process works and why that's important.
Well, first of all, usually when you do a market analysis, it's proven that you'll get more money by consulting with a realtor and, having somebody to guide you through the process, especially in this market right now, because it is a seller's market. There's a lot of things offers have, like appraisal waivers, appraisal guarantees, They'll pay over appraised value. And unless you know how to do that, it's going to fall through. Like the one big thing is like somebody, say you get 4 or 5 offers and you got to compare them, is that you want to say who's going to pay the difference if it doesn't appraise. When it goes over asking, it means that it might not be a value of what you get because the market's so inflated for sellers. And then for me, when I'm representing a seller, I call every lender before I accept an offer and make sure that they have the financials that they need to make sure that offer will close. And not sellers are not that savvy. For sale by owner sellers.
Right. And Joe, what do you see, people that work with a professional such as Cathy versus maybe calling you because they're trying to sell it on their own? What do you see the differences are, the hiccups that folks can encounter?
Wow, it's huge. It's
I bet.
huge, because maybe, I don't know. I think maybe some people or I don't know, anybody that's selling their house by owner take for granted the value of a real estate agent, because real estate agents, there's so much to take into consideration. The buyer, negotiating, certain, how qualified is the buyer? When do they want to close? Let's just put it this way. There's probably a billion different small things that are scooped up in a real estate agent's experience to compute a decision and guidance to the homeowner that they're representing, that the homeowner has not done really at all and is just starting to learn. And some are, obviously, just like in any industry, there's some are better than others, but, and I've said this many times, Cathy is very sophisticated, a great negotiator, builds great rapport, has credibility, and that's why she delivers. And, has so much experience to look out for red flags, or knows what's really important, what's not important. And that's the difference. Because I deal with a lot of different real estate agents, and there's some, like I said, I don't know, some of them pass the test, and that's about it.
Another thing I'm going to interject, like, for example, you could get an FHA loan, a buyer coming with FHA, a higher price maybe, or you could have a VA loan, or you have a conventional. And in this market, you tend to want conventional, even though you want to honor VA for sure, and FHA because of the financials. But unless a seller for sale by owner knows about all these things or has some resource, it's a confusing transition.
Yeah, and Joe, you probably deal with all of those, right?
Yes, right.
That's my phone ringing, just ignore it.
Well, and Joe's a good resource for me because sometimes I'll be calling him. It won't be related to a deal we're working on. It's just I need advice or I need to sort something out. And so he's a good resource for me in that regard.
Right. So, Joe, what's it like? Can you help us to understand what is a broker? And the difference between a broker and maybe somebody else in the mortgage industry, and how it's important to deal with someone like yourself.
Oh, that's a great question. As a consumer, when you make a decision to get a loan, you've got a few options. One is you can go to a bank, obviously. The bank has a very specific set of guidelines of what a borrower has to provide in order to get a loan through that bank. And they're looking for a very particular type of client. Or you could type your name into the internet or a website and inquire and get a billion phone calls from a lot of different mortgage lenders. They're called direct lenders. They're mortgage institutions that specifically lend money for mortgages. That's called a direct lender. And again, it's a little bit broader than a bank. But they too have their own unique set of guidelines, because all these different lenders, another word for them is investor, basically. And not all lenders want to risk. They go for a different model, a different type. So then there's a mortgage broker. A mortgage broker is a guy that has access to all of that, has access to the banks, has access to the mortgage direct lenders. That's the wholesale market. So for you, when you come to me, I can shop all that around for you and match you with what's best, because sometimes a person has fantastic credit, they don't want to do all the shopping and hear all the sales pitches. I can provide them and match them up with the excellent terms that they deserve because they manage their money so well. And then conversely, somebody that's perhaps had some struggles and but can buy a house, but can only buy a house with a certain lender that's willing to lend them money. And I've got those types of loans. So, which is a huge benefit because it's one-stop shopping. It's very efficient. I have a broad spectrum of services and loan types.
So basically any customer can call you. Somebody who's just buying a house to somebody who's probably buying their final house or anywhere in between. Good credit, medium credit, maybe not so great credit, a veteran.
Yes.
Anybody can call you then, and you can take a look at everything, correct?
Correct. That VA loan, USDA, FHA, conventional, reverse mortgage.
So we'll get to Cathy in just a second. I'm glad you touched on reverse mortgage because that's a pretty scary topic. Mm. So what is a reverse mortgage and who is it good for? Can you give us just a brief idea of that?
Sure. Just keep it simple. If you own your house 100%, there's no mortgage, or you have a small mortgage on the house, you have the ability to access money that's in your house to get more money out of your house. And instead of getting this loan, you pay off the current loan that you have, or you establish a new loan. And this is a loan that it is a loan, but you're not paying on each month. So what happens to a loan that you don't pay on? You don't have to pay on it. There's no payment requirement. Well, that loan it's going to gradually go up. Conversely, if you take out a loan, let's say $100,000 loan, and you're paying on it each month, what happens? That loan goes down each month, right? So, well, how does the lender get paid? Well, the lender makes their money when they pass away. Their heirs get control of the property, and they sell that property. And what the difference between the property and the loan that started out maybe as 100,000 and grew over, let's say, 10 years, whatever the difference is, they're going to get that equity. Or they can buy the house, pay off that loan, or refinance that loan if they want. So it's just basically a loan that you don't pay on, and naturally it's going to go higher. You own the house, you don't lose the house. All you have to do is pay taxes and insurance and keep up the house. And that's what a reverse mortgage is. It's not for everybody. If the loan payment is not a big deal for an older adult and they have a lot of equity in a house, it's no point in getting a reverse mortgage. But if you're an older adult and you've got $1,000 mortgage payment and you have a lot of equity in the house, or maybe you have a $1,500 mortgage payment and you have a lot of equity in the house, it's great, because imagine having an extra $1,500 or $1,000 a month because you're not paying on it. That's what it's for. But you don't lose the house. Your heirs get the equity in the house. You just got to keep up the taxes and insurance.
And I might give you a quick story, because my parents did a reverse mortgage, and they're both passed now, but it was like when they first became known. My sister was a realtor on the west side of the state. And the story is it had to get appraised, to decide how much money it was worth for them to do the reverse mortgage. And she herself, it had part of a craw, was in there putting a vapor barrier down on her own. I couldn't even imagine doing that myself. Anyway, wow. She got them set up, and they must have had it for 15, 20 years, not paying that payment. And it was so good because they just paid their taxes and insurance. And at the end, they still had some money in there to borrow, and it paid for my dad's hospice because he needed hospice at the very end. And my mom couldn't have done that alone. And my dad was in a job that was a non-union job. He didn't have a huge pension. They mostly lived on Social Security. So I'll tell you, it was the best thing they ever did.
So, Cathy, what do you see in the senior market? Are they selling and downsizing? Are they selling and moving in with son or daughter? Are they selling and moving into a senior living facility? What trends do you see today in the senior market?
I think I mostly see someone who's either going to assisted living or moving in with a family member. So then that's a good time to sell because the market's great for sellers right now. But it is a challenge for any buyer, particularly seniors, when you're on a fixed income, like Joe mentioned, to sell your house, you get top dollar, but then you're going to turn on buy. And the interest rate is like probably double of what you might, or if they own the house and no interest, no mortgage, they have 100% equity, no payment. And well, a lot of times though, we are seeing seniors that may have enough money from the house to pay cash, which is good, except it's a top dollar market. So you're going to pay more than you might have several years ago. So the key is if you can afford to, if you have enough to cash, you're going to be king. We say cash is king to buy a house. And that's a no brainer. And usually downsizing, going to something smaller, ranch. But it is a little struggle if you have to have a mortgage payment.
Yeah. So if you think about it, the senior could be in the greatest position of all. Maybe they're selling. They're getting a ton of money for their house. Maybe they bought it for $20,000 back in the day and they're getting a huge amount of money for it. And then they just move in with son or daughter or go to assisted living. They don't have to buy something else. So that's a really unique market that maybe I've never thought about before.
Yeah, or plus, if you are downsizing, you're getting a less expensive house overall, and you have cash. Because I'm telling you, I'm losing even first-time buyers. I'm losing out to cash buyers often. In fact, when I call and say, "Okay, we want to put an offer. Can you tell me how many offers you have?" And houses these days could have. I had one recently that was like had 8 offers, way over asking with appraisal guarantees. But my next question always is, "Do you have any cash offers?" Because cash will usually win. There's no appraisal. There's none of that. So seniors that have a house that they have equity in and are moving to something smaller are in a good position if they can pay cash because there's no mortgage payment. They get what they need to live to comfortably. And it may, like I said, a ranch often. So there's a 1 floor.
Right. I always wonder, and I'm just thinking all these cash buyers, where are they getting all of that cash that they can just go and buy a house? I mean, are you finding, Joe, that maybe people aren't needing a mortgage as much as maybe they used to, or is it just as busy as ever?
No, I understand the question. It's fascinating. There are so many cash buyers, and I also think that that's why this economy happens to be a lot stronger. Even we've had inflation, but from what I can see, in my humble opinion, is when the mortgage industry collapsed, yes, a lot of people, and it was very serious because it was financially related, and the banks and Wall Street were underwater because of these mortgage investments. But a large percentage of the country, and I saw it firsthand, had equity, and they were able to refinance at very low interest rates starting in 2009. And a lot of people refinanced into 15-year mortgages at low interest rates, and their payment really didn't change much when they went from a 30 to a 15-year. So over the next, let's say 5 to 7 years, a lot of people built a lot of equity in their houses. Number one, I think, and so selling and having the cash, I think people built a lot of equity that way. And as far as where they, plus the baby boomer generation, a lot of people are inheriting money because the baby boomer generation is getting older and they're passing away, and they're inheriting a lot of money. That would be another explanation for the cash. But besides that, here we are 2023, and there's a lot of people have houses with really low mortgage payments, and they don't want to give up their houses. So,
Right.
um, basically, I'm saying the short version is real estate has strong underpinnings. The real estate market has strong underpinnings, and that's good for the economy. It's tough. It's been tough in my industry because rates are higher, and anybody trying to buy a house now, their payments have almost doubled because of what they were people trying to buy the house a couple of years ago. When interest rates were in the twos and the threes.
And I didn't think about that because, back in the day when dirt was created and I bought my first house, it was a 30-year. And then a few years down the road, we're like, hey, I can go to a 15-year with the same payment. So that makes sense to me why maybe some of these buyers have cash. So, Cathy, what are you seeing in the markets as far as you're saying that seniors are either going to senior living or assisted living or with their families? Do you see that the families are having to move or change houses now that mom and or dad are coming to live with them, or are they making their house where they are livable?
I'm not finding so much where they say, okay, they're moving in with me, I need to get a bigger house.
Okay.
And plus it's timing. Like Joe said, some people don't want to get rid of the house. Well, the reason that it's really, they don't want to get rid of their payment. Because I've had a couple people that want to sell, but their payment and the interest rate is like half what it is currently. And so that payment, that interest rate is like, they can't part with it, until they, and then that we coach them is like, well, in maybe a few years, we don't know what the market's going to do, but you can refinance if you got to pay the higher interest rate. Or like you said, you had a high interest rate. I know the owner of our company, had one of the first ReMax franchises. They remember when the interest rate was 11%. Well, now it's about 6.25%, maybe 7%, depending on credit. And so when you compare it, you go, well, this is a good rate for people that kind of know what the standard market is. We had an exceptionally low rate because all the short sales and foreclosures. So this right now is not really an outrageous rate when you compare it to other times in history. But people are used to this low rate, so they get attached to it. So it all really depends on how much equity you have. If you can you might just have to make do with what you have for your senior parent or something until the market adjusts, and then you can maybe do some more.
Yeah. What kind of psychological effects do both of you see dealing with seniors? Maybe seniors want to sell, maybe they don't want to sell, they're being forced to sell. They've lived here for 60 years. How are you dealing with the seniors and the psychological benefit of that?
Well, there's, my feeling, especially looking at my mom, she actually was really ahead of her time. She had actually started, once my dad passed, she started looking at some of the senior assisted housing just to know what's out there and help. But she wanted to be in her house, and luckily she was till the very end, because it had a first floor bedroom and all the stuff, because she lived there. She raised her children. She had all kinds of conveniences, and all your friends are around. The neighbors watched out for each other. So I think it is a psychological adjustment, unless you're just really unusual and practical and know what to do.
Yeah, no.
She went through with her mother having to go through the house and getting rid of stuff. So she actually started getting rid of stuff after my father passed. It was a couple of years in between of giving stuff away, so we didn't have to deal with that. I mean, she was ahead of her time, but that's not usually the case.
Yeah, we had Corrine on the estate sale just a little while back, and she talked about how a lot of these seniors are very attached to their house. They're very attached to the things in their home. And so I'm sure it can be a challenge, like what you were saying, just going through and trying to get rid of things. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that's another episode of Simply Medicare. I'm your host, Debbie Straub, and we will look forward to talking again soon.
If you've enjoyed this edition of Simply Medicare podcast and you don't want to miss any future episodes, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Please also leave comments and offer feedback so we can make this podcast the best it can be for you. If you need assistance with your Medicare sign-up or you just have general Medicare questions, make sure to reach out to me at 248-227-0347. You can also reach me online at michiganmedicarespecialist.com or through my email at debbie@michiganmedicarespecialist.com. I really look forward to working with you soon.